Hello, welcome to Spicy Dungeoneer, and also welcome to one of my videos coming in and looking more closely at the Vaesen RPG game, and having DM'd it several times now with various contexts and different people, everything from campaigns to one-shots to using conventions to even English classes and stuff like that. I'd like to share my thoughts. I do also play this game, so I've got the perspective from both sides of the DM screen. Today we're going to be talking about actually comparing the archetypes, which in D&D terms that is the classes. I much prefer the word archetype though. As some of you may know, I am moving away from Dungeons and Dragons. I think I've had enough of Hasbro, and although I've played Dungeons and Dragons since first edition, I am starting to look at new things, and even though I have also tried Dragonbane and other things that are other games that are set within that same medieval world, I'm now trying to branch out into other things like Alien RPG. So I enjoy a wide genre of games now, and if you want to continue to play D&D, that's fine. I've got nothing against D&D. I think a lot of people cut their teeth on D&D, but I'm moving more into Vaesen because I like the investigation part of it. To me now, when I play D&D, there's too much combat. It's too slow. Things move slowly. Plus, you have like one or two characters with the charisma to have like conversations or interactions with negotiations or investigations. So I like that Vaesen, everybody's involved in that rather than just one or two characters. Anyway, I'm going to mostly use characters or archetypes from the Vaesen RPG core rulebook, but I have included stuff from the book Mythic Britain and Ireland. Where I'm also starting to go with Vaesen is, although I love the Swedish context, I want to bring in more of this Mythic Britain and Ireland book, and also the new Kickstarter sort of Eastern European ones book that's coming out, City of Evil and Mythic Carpathia, and there's also a book of Ukrainian monsters that I really enjoyed and I've reviewed before, and I'd like to put that in. So what I'm trying to say is my world is getting more multicultural. Anyway, you can find the character creation rules in the core rulebook from page 17 to 56. I'm not using the background tables. I'll do another video about that later. So it says step 1 is to choose your archetype, and basically that boils down to the academic, the hunter, the officer, the private detective, who I will mostly call the detective, the vagabond, the doctor, the occultist, the priest, the servant, the writer. And Mythic Britain and Ireland added the athlete, the entertainer, and the socialite. I did like the athlete because it's got a lot of options depending on what sport you're involved, so I thought it was a good way to introduce a sort of like nuance of different, or a variety of different characters under the umbrella of athlete. Entertainer and socialite I am less interested in. I think the entertainer takes too much away from the vagabond, but we'll discuss that later. Socialite's fine though, and as you'll see, it is the richest character in the game. So you only have one type of archetype, and in general, it's not like they're all pretty good. Like, I don't want you to think that, oh, I've chosen this one and it's no good, because they all have their uses and they're all fun. It will depend on what sort of game that you play. And I think by looking at this video, you'll be able to work out not only the best character for you, but also how to build a party that is more balanced. So basically, when you are building a character, you have attributes and skills, and we'll go more into those later. But the 4 attributes are physique, precision, logic, and empathy. I really like this system. Physique sort of covers strength and constitution in D&D speak. Precision is dexterity. Logic is intelligence and parts of wisdom, whereas empathy is charisma and parts of wisdom. So I think actually that's all you need. I think maybe we should be looking at ways to simplify things, and one of the things I love about this game is it is fairly simple to explain to beginners. I have explained it to beginners in conventions who have never played Vaesen before, and I've also explained it to English as a second language students, and they picked it up after a few rolls of the dice. Anyway, so to try to get a good idea of where the archetypes fall, you can see that the physique, you have the servant, the vagabond, and the athlete. I put the Mythic Britain and Ireland archetypes in green throughout this video. Logic is academic, doctor, and the private detective. All 3 of those are very useful. Precision, hunter, occultist, and officer. The occultist is very popular. And empathy, priest, writer, entertainer, and socialite. Priest is another very useful one. Writer can be for inspiration, and we'll talk about that later. But basically, empathy and logic are what you use for your fear rolls. So when you encounter something that's terrifying, you roll versus fear, and that's sort of like a saving throw. So basically, characters with logic and empathy are going to be better at overcoming fear. There's no skill for that. It's just logic and empathy. Precision is good for shooting and stealth. That's why I really don't understand why the vagabond doesn't have precision, whereas the occultist does. I think I would have tweaked these a little bit differently, but I'll make another video in the future about how I would change the archetypes. Physique, servant, vagabond, and athlete. I think many people would be turned off by the servant but if you think about all of the butlers and servants in the stories who were secretly military trained, or had skills like that, the servant can often be one of the strongest, like physical strength characters in the team, and be very useful for force rolls, basically, which we'll discuss later. So looking at the skills, you can see that the academic has learning, hunter has range combat, officer has range combat. So really, I would say you don't really need a hunter and an officer for that, because it's covering the same skill. You only really need one. The detective has investigation, and the doctor medicine, the occultist stealth, priest observation, servant force, writer inspiration. The athlete has a variety of things depending on what sport they choose. Vagabond has manipulation, entertainer has manipulation, and the socialite has inspiration. So I've color coded these. The light blue means it's optimal. That means that your main attribute and the skill match, which means it straight off the bat, you can have 5 in the attribute and 3 in the skill, which gives you 8, and that's the maximum you can have it. Purple is suboptimal, so the main attribute and skill don't match. And that would mean that you can have the maximum of 4 in the attribute and 3 in the skill. So, that means that you need to think about that, because this is one of my problems with the Entertainer, is it sort of steals the Vagabond's game and does it better. The Writer and the Socialite compete with each other too. Force is often used to endure, like a constitution saving throw, so against fire and stuff like that. So force can be is one of those, what I like to call saving throw skill checks. Stealth, I'm really interested in how come the occultist got stealth, but the Vagabond got manipulation. I understand the Vagabond might be manipulating people, but I think stealth would have been better here, and manipulation for the occultist. It's also interesting that the Doctor isn't optimal for medicine, which is supposed to be their thing. Learning is definitely very useful at the start of the game, and so the academic is really the person who does the research right at the start of the game. So that's their time to shine. I have found the academic to be very useful for that. The detective gets investigation, which is very useful for like finding clues and stuff. But often investigation can be also used, or observation, and observation is obviously much more useful. So the priest is shining again here because they get that observation. Inspiration is good for healing mental conditions, whereas medicine is used to heal physical conditions. So you can see, like, the learning's good, investigation is good, manipulation is lying and stuff like that, which can be useful. Inspiration is good. Force. Now, agility is used to escape. It's like a dexterity saving throw. You will also have observation is another one that sometimes used as a saving throw, or vigilance. So then let's have a look at the wealth. So you normally start with the lowest rank of wealth, unless you spend a skill point to raise it by 1, and if you don't do that when you're creating the character, you can take talents, the talent which is wealthy, and increase your resources. So as you can see, the Vagabond and the Occultist are at the bottom, whereas the Socialite is way up the top, although the Officer can get there too, but just starts at a lower one. Academic, Doctor and Priest are also up there. They can't go as high as a Socialite, but they certainly can start at the same level. So this game does create an unofficial sort of class system with this resources, but the society that the characters belong to works together. So as long as you have 1 or 2 characters with good resources, they can sort of help the ones that don't. So it's not too important, but you wouldn't want to have an entire party with low resources. But saying that, it really does depend on the GM. I personally, when I am doing one-shots, I don't really worry too much about resources. I let characters choose one extra item just, to help them along and create some excitement for the game. But in my campaign, I'm about to start getting quite strict with the resources. Alright, and then we'll have a look at the starting talents. The academic has erudite. So these are talents which I think are interesting, and that therefore you might wish to have them. All of the talents are pretty good. I would say when you're leveling up your character though, you might want to take skill points rather than talents, unless there's something that fits in with the build or how you imagine your character. Some of the talents are good. For example, some of them that give you more chance to resist a fear roll, or be able to not more likely to get an insight when you get wounded a lot. So when you become broken as a character, you take a permanent injury, or they can be permanent, they're not always permanent, but if you roll high, you can get also a permanent boon from the injury. And so if you have this talent called 9 lives, I believe, which basically you can roll twice and choose whichever you want, that increases your ability to get the score that would give you an insight, or at least choose a injury that is less damaging to your character. But these are just talents here that I think are interesting and that people would be interested in playing. So erudite means that the academic can establish truths about the places or phenomena. So they can't do that about the Vaesen itself, but they could say this particular area is a fishing village or something like that. The occultist has this skill called medium, which allows it to predict the future and talk to the dead, which is one of the, the occultist sort of is the most magical creature, archetype I should say, where perhaps the priest is also on that line, but in a way the occultist is the wizard, the priest is the cleric from D&D. Private detective, elementary. I actually love private detectives, and remember, this is an investigation game, not a adventure game, so I always find the detective to be a lot of fun, and that this elementary talent just helps you to put all the clues together with the GM's help. The vagabond has well traveled, which lets them create an NPC. The writer has automatic writing, which adds clues, predictions, and insights into the adventure. All of the archetypes from Mythical Britain and Ireland are all just general archetypes from the core rulebook, which is a little bit disappointing. But the entertainer, once again, is stealing from the vagabond with this well-travelled. So basically, I think that's a bit disappointing, really. Then the socialite is wealthy. You can choose wealthy, therefore, there's a real big chance that you could maximize the wealth with this particular character. Then, if we have a look at the starting equipment, the occultist and the priest are the only ones that get anything like magical equipment. So the crystal ball with the occultist allows them to sort of get observation checks using the crystal ball. The powdered staghorn is used against fairy charms and stuff like that. So it's not a game breaker, but it is useful in certain circumstances. And likewise, the holy water for the priest. Holy water is useful against undead. The doctor and the servant get a medicine bag or bandages, which helps with healing rolls. The book collection is good at the start of the game when you're trying to find clues and stuff like that. And also during the game, if you sort of like want to try to convince the GM to give you some clues by doing a bit of research when some new information comes up. So that's useful, and the academic and the writer get that. Lockpicks or a crowbar are good for getting into places you shouldn't. The detective gets the lockpicks, the vagabond the crowbar. The servant gets the hurricane lamp, which is useful if you're going to be running around at night because no one gets dark vision. That's one of the great things about this game, is the night is dangerous again, and being in the dark is dangerous and inconvenient again. Hooray! We don't have every single character with dark vision anymore. Liquor and fine wine is interesting. It's got some uses for like manipulating people and stuff like that. And now we're getting closer to the weapons, and I would say how useful weapons are depends on your DM. If you're in a lot of combat, then you're going to need them. I have played whole games without getting into any combat, which is one of the strengths of the game. I like to actually solve the mystery and do whatever I have to do to fix everything up without fighting people, if possible. But saying that, I do like that the detective has a revolver, and if it needs to, can use it. And my detective that I play has certainly waved his revolver around a few times and kept people at bay. So it is a prop that can be used for role playing as well. But weapons are good if you need them. I always say to my players, if you're in a gunfight with a Vaesen, the game is out of your control. But certainly there can be angry villagers and thugs and criminals that you might have to use them against during the game. So in my sort of understanding, and by looking at how other people have been playing and playing some of them and GMing them and stuff like that, here are my thoughts about the archetypes and where they fit. And basically I would put the occultist is first. It's really one of those ones that often gets picked first, and I think it's mainly because it's such an interesting idea. Everyone likes magic users and wizards. The academic is also a very useful character and sort of trades in on the wizard type in that they have knowledge. So it is very useful at the start of the game and can be useful through the game when it comes to learning skills, which can be used to uncover clues. The priest in general is good for giving inspiration and healing mental conditions. Also, like I said, they get the holy water, they get the observation, so it is a very good character and starts off with quite well. For me, Private Detective is just a ton of fun, and I really love playing my Private Detective. The Vagabond, to be honest with you, I didn't know whether this was a good character or not until I saw somebody start to play it, and I sort of began to understand, okay, yeah, it's sort of the thief of the party. Saying that, it doesn't have a lot of status in terms of resources, and so it's like in this sort of world there could be problems with them being under-resourced, and obviously the entertainer has started to infringe upon the vagabond's skills. I would even put the entertainer here at 5 as an option for the vagabond. The doctor is good, not as good as the others with There are some issues with the Doctor, which I have mentioned in previous videos about medicine actually being attached to precision, but their talent ignoring mental conditions against medicine roles. So there's obviously a mistake there in the writing. They're bringing out an errata corrected version of the core rulebook in September 2025, and I've ordered that, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they fix it up. It'll be interesting to see how they change this as well. The Hunter, and I think, is fun. I do like that they get a healing with herbalism role. It's like a ranger in that way. The writer is sort of like a bard, but only in the written word. It sort of taps into the wizard skill set as well, but I think the academic and the occultist do it better. The officer, I don't know. I don't think the officer is very useful. I would actually put that as the least useful character. I only put servant at 10 because a lot of people don't like the idea of being a servant to other people. But I think if you look at it like some sort of like force character, like a physique, strong character, rather than having to serve people, it's very useful. The socialite, well, I think that the socialite depends on how important money is in your game. Obviously, that's a very useful skill to have if resources are important. Otherwise, they might not be as useful as you think. I would put them sort of in the 5-6 range. The athlete I would put down here with the officer and servant. Although I like the character, I like the idea of how it's got a lot of options. So it's one of the most unique archetypes in that it's got the most amount of options, but I just don't think it does anything that other archetypes don't do already. Alright, so there we have it. There are my thoughts. What do you think? I'd like to know what other people are experiencing with the archetypes and which ones they like, which ones do they find useful in games, what's the best build for a party of 4 or 5. Let me know in the comments. If you enjoy this video, please subscribe and share with other people and like, because that really helps. Vaesen is not as popular as some of the other bigger games, and so I get it. But if you are into Vaesen, please share this with other people who are also into Vaesen, and that will help us build this great game, which I am really enjoying at the moment. This is a small channel, and I realize my production skills are not fantastic, but I do my best to bring useful content to people. So, with all that said, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.